Gaurav Sharma. Now, that is a big issue, which is really in the media. Chris Waterman's right here, right now to talk about it. So what's your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, g'day, Maxie. Good to be back. Look, Gaurav Sharma, interesting guy, right? Highly respected surgeon, coming out of the MP of in Hamilton. Something doesn't quite pass the sniff test here, and I've noticed in the media, yesterday and today, quite a change of their narrative, talking about how the Prime Minister's actions and the Labour Party actions have been fair towards Gaurav and his accusations. The Prime Minister came out and said that she hasn't seen evidence to substantiate Dr. Sharma's claims. What she didn't say is if she'd asked to see evidence, so that's quite a different thing, right?
Absolutely. Good point.
Because she just needs to ask her Chief of Staff, but to substantiate it or not. But, it doesn't... Where there is smoke, there is fire, and it doesn't seem like the ramblings of someone going through a mental breakdown like the Prime Minister has tried, or the Labour Party and the media this week has tried to gaslight him into thinking. So, look, smoke, there's fire. The bullying claim is interesting. Labour has a couple of issues with this. There's another MP, Anna Lork, who's been accused of bullying some of her staff
Before we
members.
move off him, was he suspended?
Yeah, absolutely. Suspended by the Labour Party caucus yesterday.
Pending what?
Some mediation between the whips and the caucus, whips and caucus and Gaurav, to see if he can come back into...
Chris, can I share with you, because I do employment law, I just want to share a perspective from that perspective. So if this guy's in an employment relationship with the Prime Minister, for example, and that's his boss, the obligation in law, so there's no thinking about this, the obligation in law for an employer is to undertake an investigation. They are required by law to investigate any allegation of bullying. Now, that's done by, it's not prescribed in law, but what happens is the courts have made decisions in that regard, and that's what we, as advisors, tell all employers. You got an allegation, you must investigate it. Now, it's something at this high level should be investigated, and I would recommend an independent investigation.
And it's really interesting that the Prime Minister said, absolutely not, we're not investigating this at all. And it's either because she has rock hard evidence to suggest that Dr. Sharma is telling porkies or not telling the whole story, or she's not 100% confident that the whip or the former whip, Kieran McNulty's behaviour hasn't been
You
perfect.
probably haven't had a chance to see it yet, but Richard Preble this morning put an article out, and what he said, the unwritten rule with all politics is you don't have an investigation on your own party. Now, he's criticising National then for doing an investigation on
Sam Buffendale.
Yeah.
I mean that's fair. Like
No, it's not.
No,
It's
no,
not fair.
no.
Not fair to the complainant.
In terms of that's a fair political point to make.
Yes.
So if you look at one of the things that shot Simon Bridges in the foot in his leadership was when his travel expenses were leaked and he ordered an inquiry and it turned out to be his chief whip that was leaking against him. Right, like massive cluster. The Prime Minister probably doesn't want to wade into the same thing. It would be problematic for her if it turned out that her whips and her party management structure in the Parliamentary Party had turned out to be less than ideal.
So let's look at her, because now she's got her reputation worldwide on being kind and being fair and reasonable, and actually just looks after people come first. She ran the whole epidemic we've had in this country on people come first. She gets this guy who says, I've been bullied, and now she's made him a victim. He's now suspended. He's now looking at the future of his career being in jeopardy, and he's despised probably by all his party.
Yeah, well,
That's not fair, Chris.
What Gaurav really needed was, he released some private communications between him and another unnamed MP about had some similar issues, right? And the unnamed MP said that, how do I fake a COVID test because I don't want to go back to Parliament next week? And this was in the past. He really needed that person to break ranks with them. But the caucus has probably stared down, if there is a problem, has stared that problem down and
Is it? I read it that his substantive issue was that he was being bullied, he's been ignored, he had issues with his staff. Now, folks, if you don't know, and Chris will be better to explain this than me, that he is not the boss of his own staff.
No, correct.
The political services run that.
Yeah,
the
parliamentary
services
run that.
So he went and said, hey, this person's out of hand, and expenditure, blah, 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 and they did nothing. And so,
So-
we went again and again and again.
Gurev's problem with his staff was a couple of issues, right? Like Gurev claims that some staff didn't turn up, they turned up drunk, their performances at a poor standard. When he went to the relevant people, the management of these other junior staffers in Parliament, the management didn't do anything about it. When he took it to the Parliamentary Service, they didn't do anything about it. He made some claims about staff and
And he took it to his
MPs
whip.
wasting money. Went to the whip, and that's where he claimed that Kieran McNulty started to bully him. I think that the Prime Minister is fearful that there could have been robust whipping of her caucus by whips that may not meet the standard that she wants to portray, so won't investigate. Quite different to what...
Is the Prime Minister's behaviour over this matter appropriate?
It's very interesting that she's not providing Gurev with some natural justice, right? Like with the ability to...
Do I say that's a no? I'm trying to read you,
Yeah,
my friend. I don't know.
do I think that the Prime Minister's behaviour in this... Is the political behaviour correct? No. Because what she's done is she's kicked the can down the road by 107 days. She said that Gurev can come back in December if he does through mediation, and we're on our
Do you know how I
pathway.
perceive you? No, tell me if I'm wrong. I perceive that you're reading this in two aspects. One, what politically is the best thing for her to do for her political career.
Yep.
And I'm looking at it from a perspective, what's fair and reasonable here for our society?
So fair and reasonable should be an investigation into the claims.
Yeah.
As you say, in any other workplace, if I worked for you and you were bullying me and I went to the boss and I said, I think Max is bullying me and here's some examples, they would have to investigate, right? The boss can go, no, we're not investigating this at all.
God.
Who is it?
Don't know.
No.
I killed it. We're going to have to cut this down now. Cut the phone. I won't do it. Even the phone won't switch. Oh, there it is. It's on airplane mode.
So it's quite different, Max. If you and I, do you want to see what time it was?
7 minutes here.
Okay.
Go on.
So it's quite different, Max. If you and I work together, I could go to the boss and say, Max is bullying me. Here's some examples. The boss would have to, the CEO or whatever, would have to investigate those claims. It's not right that the Prime Minister doesn't investigate the same claims. Now, she could do that. It could be a very quick investigation, right? A week, fortnight, whatever. And I'm sure in your employment advocacy, you can see that, as you said, there's no prescribed method for it. It can be over very quickly, or it could take weeks and weeks. Quite a different situation to what's happened in the National Caucus. The National Caucus, the leader has cauterised a problem that was starting to seep by bringing in an independent investigation to look at the claims made by a couple of people and whether or not the process of selecting this person was correct. That's do I think that that's the right thing to do? Yeah, for the situation it is. Could they have just turned up and said, I think Richard Prebble wrote in the Herald this morning, Luxon should have turned up and said, this guy has my support for the next 16 months. He was selected and voted by the Tauranga people in 16 months' time. Tauranga can choose whether or not
That's
they
exactly
re-elect
what
him.
he said. He said you should support your own and kick your enemy. That's
Yes, yeah. What did he say? Anything for my friends, nothing for my enemies.
Oh, you did see it.
But savvy politics from Christopher Luxon, not savvy politics from the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister for the last week has looked under siege. But Max, really interestingly, what do we think should constitute bullying? Because that
Oh yes, this is a nightmare in my world, and thanks for asking, because it just is. I'd say every second claim, if not every claim, has got the word bullying in it somewhere. So, and what constitutes it? It's got to be something that's repetitive. It goes on regularly. It's substantive. It can be a mix of a whole lot of behaviours toward a person, and those accumulated, they can mean something, or it could be one major event. Someone gets up and bashes you in the mouth. That's quite a bit of bullying then. So yeah, it's got myriad of definitions, and it's subjective. So it's a matter of how it's interpreted. But from a perspective of an employer, this is the way the legal system look at it. I see. From an initial perspective, they could say, I don't see anything here. Just go away. And I think that's what the Prime Minister's done here. But that's when, but a bit of deeper look into it, and they may find, maybe there was something in it, and maybe there was some covert bullying going on behind the scenes here that no one was aware of.
So where does because what I understand, and you're the guy to say if I'm right or wrong here, is being short or rude with somebody isn't bullying in a workplace.
Oh, yeah, good point, Chris, because that's up for interpretation. Now, the way I was told way back in time, 20 years ago, when things were a bit more robust, Max, some librarians wouldn't like anybody perhaps raising their voice at them or talking a little bit harshly about their performance. So, whereas you go onto a work site and use foul language, that robust language is just used in everyday sort of thing. So you've got it's horses for courses. Now, what I was told in those early days even, if the person said they didn't like a certain behaviour, their obligation is to notify the bully or the person saying, please don't speak to me like that. I don't appreciate it. If you've got any problems, take me aside and talk to me rationally and calmly.
So if I can pick up on that, it's if the person doesn't like the behaviour, to approach the person who does it. So what happens if that person goes, I approach you, I think you're bullying me because you don't invite me to lunch, but you invite all my other colleagues. And I go, Max, why didn't you invite me to lunch? And you go, I just don't like you. Is that bullying? Because that's a really interesting part.
To me,
right?
it's not, but I mean, it's.
But for people my age, could be.
Yeah. Oh, yes, because there's a lot of sensitive people around in this world at the moment, and that could be deemed as highly, highly offensive. And in some circles, it would be. Absolutely would be.
But as being offensive or rude or short or impolite actually bullying? Because, it's intimidatory, it's repetitive,
it's subjective, Chris, and the whole lot of circumstances would go around it. Look, I'm not saying I have the answers even, because what it happens, it's the individual, how sensitive is the individual, and know when to be sensitive, and have they already said, hey, look, please speak to me in better terms or use different language because this really upsets me. Has the person got mental illness? Those sort of things, it depends what the employer knew at the time and what, an employer could weaponize just telling somebody off and cause a lot of harm and do it deliberately. And that's what bullying is almost just getting, it's an extravagant means of bullying.
The interesting part there is when you said weaponize, because telling somebody that they're not very good at their job or saying your performance isn't up to standard isn't. But
it could be used as a weapon, though.
It could be. It could be. Like if
you're completely hopeless asshole. I've had a gut full of you. You really don't even I can't rely on you to finish anything, do anything right, and you're just a shocker.
Which is interesting because on a work site, that to an apprentice may be okay.
I thought you were going to say this. My boss said to me today.
No, but in a professional environment, an office environment, that might not be okay.
Depends on the environment. Even outside nowadays, that would not be acceptable.
Yeah, because I think there could be...
But again, let me just carry it on, because that's why I'm interested, and please, you asked me that. It's the responsibility of an employer to say to somebody, your performance isn't up to standard, I need you to improve. Now, I put that in a factual, meaningful way, but that could be highly offensive, even saying it to someone. They'll go away and say, my boss doesn't even like me.
And this is where I think, some of the stuff around the parliamentary service may be coming out, right? Another Labour MP, Anna Law, has been accused of inappropriate bullying behaviour of her staff by asking people to move furniture around her office for an hour, or asking them to drive her home after a function. These are support staff members. Asking them to do something and then sending them multiple emails throughout the day for more things to be done. I don't know if asking someone to do their job should constitute a bullying claim.
No. I think you know the answer to that one as well, but no, the answer is no. But that's where our society's going at the moment, and look, that's why it gets dangerous. We start talking about the new rules coming about, using hate speech, and that could be treading into this area, which is subjective, and it depends on who you're talking to and what it is, and it's a very dangerous area.
Yeah, that hate speech one is an interesting one because we already have law around inciting violence, right? The
physical violence that normally is, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, is there a thing called mental violence? I suppose. I suppose there is.
To cause harm, I guess you could probably apply it. The interesting part about hate speech legislation is that I should have the right to say what I want. Saying what I want may cause offence. Your offence shouldn't cancel my right to freedom of speech, right? That's kind of the arithmetic that goes on.
I quite often have to go to a mediation, Chris, and represent the employer. Now, I've got an employee sitting on the other side who's known to have mental illness, suffers depression, and is feeling like they're being bullied. So I have to start the whole association. I look at the mediator and saying, look, I'm not here to hurt the feelings of so-and-so, but I have to speak frankly, because it's not, I've got to represent my client. So please forgive me, and I'll look at the other one, if I do say things that you don't find comfortable or you like at all, but I have to say it. And I want to be able to have freedom to say that, and that's the purpose of this mediation. Now, that's not giving me license to go through and give them a verbal slap and
Sure.
tell them they're off. But that's how I would lead the conversation, and that still shouldn't lead a bully into giving the bully a license to bully somebody.
So what happens when? What's the reverse? So I've gone to the boss and I've said Max is bullying me, and I've provided some examples. They've suspended you, or they've moved you away from working with me. There's an investigation, and it comes out that my claim is unfounded. What is the employer's responsibility, or do you have any recourse to come back at me
Chris,
to say, actually, Chris bullied me with that false claim?
Yeah, and that's where it doesn't happen enough. There should be consequences for bringing up false claims, and there's not. I tell you what, employers don't do it. They go, oh, thank God that's all over. Now we can say to this guy, sorry, your claim for bullying hasn't been upheld. Tough luck, and I hope you have a nice day.
But could you then go to the employer and say, well, Chris bullied me through that claim? I suffered depression. My work suffered. I was anxious coming to work. My relationship with my partner failed.
And that's all true. They even get saying, I'm scared to go to work. I'll get claimed to be a bully for just doing my job as a supervisor or giving people instructions. So I am frightened to do work. And it happens, and the boss usually says, get over it.
Yeah, interesting. So
it's not fair. It's not fair.
And
lots of it's not fair.
At the end of it, I lot covered. Politically, I think the political...
Well, bringing it back.
yeah, lot covered today. The political management of Gaurav Sharma hasn't been great by the Prime Minister. It looks like she's ass covering. She needs to have an investigation. The political management by Christopher Luxon into Sam Uffindale, I think, has probably been substandard as well. Right thing to do to move the media cycle on. It's a shame that he didn't kind of... I think maybe his grumpiness was more towards the fact that he wasn't told about these things rather than them actually happening. Investigation's good. In the workplace, just be careful. Right? What did you used to say? Call everybody by their name, keep your hands to yourself, and be polite. That's how you.
Me?
Yeah, that's what you used to say.
Did I?
That's how you avoid issues.
Right. Okay, well that's true. I mean, do all that plus a lot more these days. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Max.
That
Good to be back.
Very, very interesting chat.